Hello and welcome back to Something Rotten. Listener, it has been a short week for you. It has been nearly a month for Blake and I. This might be the longest break we've taken since recording the start of the podcast because Blake decided to take his little ass down to North Carolina.
That's true. Also, the longest break we've taken since starting this podcast was actually like 2.5 years.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Correct. After its rebirth.
I went on what you might call a world tour of sorts.
You went on a Rumspringa.
A what?
The thing that Amish people go on, where they like experiment with not being Amish. You
Yeah.
experimented with not being a Minnesotan.
Yeah, I'm happy to report I've decided to use technology, but my family will not talk to me anymore. Yeah, I went to Kentucky, then North Carolina, then Kentucky, and then the great island nation of Japan, Jacob. It was an insane few weeks. I can't recommend traveling that hard if you can help it. Usually a few breaks in between make it a little easier on the body and mind.
Can I ask, does either the great state of Kentucky or the great island nation of Japan have the fast food chain Cookout?
So Kentucky does. Yes.
Oh,
But
damn it.
not
I was
it-
hoping for a
Yeah.
trump card.
Not in Louisville, though, which is where I'm from and was visiting. So I've never had Cookout in Kentucky.
Well, what'd you think? Tell me about Cookout, even though we got it together. I just want to hear you say it.
Cookout's great, man. It's so the thing. Here's one of my favorite genres of restaurant. Funny restaurants with funny menus.
Yeah.
You know the type, your Applebee's, your Chili's, and definitely Cookout, a restaurant with a scientifically improbable amount of food combinations you can order.
And a menu that looks like Dr. Bronner's soap or House of Leaves, just in like trying to read what's going on there.
So it appealed to me at my base level to be able to order a burger, a quesadilla, hush puppies, and a cheesecake chocolate or a cheesecake milkshake. And
That's
then
right.
Eat all of that after a wonderful, healthy hike that I think has done irreparable, not the hike, the meal has done irreparable damage to my body in the ensuing weeks.
Well, and you ate it crouching in a parking lot, which is also part of the Cookout experience.
In extreme heat, probably breathing in fumes from passing cars in the drive-thru. It was
That's
great.
right. That's Cookout, baby.
One of the highlights of my trip, but not the best part of my trip to North Carolina, which was, of course, going to a minor league baseball game and watching the Durham Bats, Raleigh Bats, Durham Bulls get the I was getting them mixed up with the Louisville River Bats, our minor league team. Anyway, going to see them get the absolute shit knocked out of them.
Yeah, what was the score? It was like 9-1.
It was unbelievable, but I had a bunch of hot dogs.
But here's the thing about minor league baseball. Doesn't matter. We had a great time. We ate hot dogs and saw Woolly Bull.
And here's the extra fucked up thing. Jacob's partner was so nice to go out of her way to find a way to purchase me one of the beer bats, but without beer in it, which was very nice of her. And then I left it at AJ Moser's house on accident.
Oh, AJ needs both his and your bats to beat off his dog.
AJ needs what?
Oh,
to
boy.
do what? He needs what, Jacob?
Look, here's the thing.
I don't know if he can find that thing.
We should maybe retake that one.
Nope. Sorry, you gotta live
All right.
with that.
Well, AJ's the one who has to live with that. And
Jesus.
and then he went to fucking Japan.
And then I went to fucking Japan.
Now there is some of this that I think you can't talk about because it
Sure.
will be in upcoming issues of the magazine Game Informer. But you had a chance encounter at a bar
It
that
wasn't.
I'm really trying to hear more about.
It wasn't really a chance encounter. It was a calculated decision I made to go meet one of, definitely not my favorite director, but up there in the pantheon, whose name is Shozen Fukui. I apologies if I'm not pronouncing that exactly right. Jacob, are you familiar with him at all?
Nope.
So in the West, he's probably most well known. Well, he's part of the like Japanese cyberpunk movement, specifically the live action movement there. There's a little bit of a difference between the like anime side, which had maybe a longer history than the live action side. He did briefly work on Tetsuo, which everyone is familiar with. As far as I understand, he didn't do much aside from like I think driving some equipment around, but did briefly work on it. But he directed 964 Pinocchio and Rubber's Lover, which are two of his more notable films in the cyberpunk genre. Kind of some of the end caps of that whole movement. He also did some amazing shorts called Gararisuto, I believe, and Caterpillar. Anyway, this is all beside the point. He didn't have the longest career. He still like pops up and like directs some like small budget things and does some like art performances. But his, as far as I can tell, day-to-day job is just running this bar in Higashi Nakano, my favorite neighborhood in Tokyo.
Oh, I didn't know. I did not know this part of the story. I thought that he was just a patron.
No.
I thought that you walked in and he was at this bar.
No. I went to his bar. He runs a bar in Higashi Nakano, which if you ever go to Tokyo, please go to the Nakano and Higashi Nakano areas. They're one train station apart. Amazing neighborhood. Called TV Bar, Kimori, I believe. And I don't drink, as listeners might know, but my coworker who was with me, Alex Van Aken, I forced to go to this bar and order beer so I could meet him. And yeah, we went, and I speak the same amount of Japanese as I'd say dumb 2-year-old, and that I can communicate the most basic things possible, and then anything beyond that is not possible for me. But I went, and I don't know if it's his wife or partner or just friend. I'm not exactly sure. They had some kind of very close relationship, it seemed. But we were there and just kind of like sitting around. It's one of those very small Japanese bars you see that seats only like 4 people on like the second story of this building. And I was wearing, funnily, I bought a shirt while I was there at same neighborhood, actually, just down the street at a store called Hardcore Chocolate that I like a lot for the movie we've talked about, Battles Without Honor and Humanity. They had a shirt for the first movie I really wanted, so I went and bought it. And it ended up being one of the best decisions I made because for Japanese people of a certain age, which I would say is over 40, that movie is a big deal. And so everyone I encountered that was like a little older would see the shirt, and it was the instant icebreaker. Like numerous interviews started with like dudes being like, "Yo, sick shirt. Where did you get that?"
That's so funny to imagine like Japanese guy coming to America to interview game developers, picking up like a Godfather shirt, and everyone being like, "Yo!"
It happened so many times it became like a joke on the trip. But anyway, we were sitting there, and I heard her like pointing at my shirt, being like saying something about it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, Hardcore Chocolate. Like I love this movie." And then I was like, "Well, this is the perfect moment." So in my broken Japanese, I was like, yeah, demo, which means like, but, Fukui-san. And he like looked up at me and I was like, just your movies, blah, 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 like, 964, Gary Suto. And he was looking at me like, oh, cool, my movies. And finally I was like, fuck it. And I pulled my phone out and used Google Translate and I was like, I'm a huge fan of your movies. And then he was a super nice guy, and I know I am definitely not the only person who is a fan of his movies to go to his bar. I don't think it's very common for foreigners who don't live in Japan to just show up and be like, yo, I came here because I wanted to meet you because I like your movies. And I was like, I don't even drink. I had to order water. And Alex, of course, like, who I was with, told him, like, Blake's been talking about this all week. Like, it's all he wanted to do. And so, like, I don't want to overstate it, but it did seem like I made their, like, day. Like,
no, I'm sure they're going to go home and be like, there was this white guy who, like, knew a lot about my movie.
They seemed so stoked. And it made my day. It was, like, easily the highlight of my trip. I mean, we were only in there for, like, probably 20, 30 minutes.
That's awesome.
It was very late, so I didn't want to stay too long. But, like, it was rad, and we talked. we couldn't communicate super well, so we ended up just using Google Translate on our phones to like talk back and forth for a while. Like, it was super, super cool. Super, super nice couple that I can't recommend enough. If you're ever in Japan, go to their bar. I assume they probably wouldn't care if we pointed people to their tiny bar. It's very small, so maybe don't.
Yeah, probably not.
Maybe don't take a party of like 20 because it can only fit like 5 people inside it. But it was awesome.
Do you know about? I'm thinking about this kind of idea of like someone working in one industry and then starting essentially like a food service place that like if you know for other people, because I watched recently Minmax, the podcast that I'm on other than Something Rotten, did this like community documentary festival where people just got to submit something, and one of them was about this this cafe in Japan called like 84 Hashi.
Is it
Do you know about this place?
The Nintendo bar?
The secret Nintendo bar, which now apparently you can just like make an appointment to and go to. It's like more open, but it's just like this bar run by a guy who used to work at Nintendo that is just like covered in fucking like original sketches by like Miyamoto and everything. I mean, I immediately zeroed in on like there is a whole section of the wall that's just like the Fumito Ueda collection.
Yeah.
That's just like that going on. But it's just like, I think it's such a cool idea to be like, oh, I used to work in this industry and now I'm going to like start a cafe for people who work in this industry. Just to like, hey, you want to come and like talk shit about games? Let's go.
I mean, the guy, the Tekken guy, he runs a bar. He actually does it.
Right. Well, he does he do the YouTube thing that you've talked about?
Yeah, out of his, I'm fairly certain it's his bar. He does a YouTube channel where he interviews people out of it. But yeah, he has one. I heard, I don't know if it was true, but I heard about one of the RGG developers having a bar. But I think they were getting him conflated with the Tekken guy. But I did hear that on that trip, and I've tried to Google around to find it. But
it seems like if one of the RGG guys had anything, it would be a karaoke place.
They said it, and I was like, that's crazy. I've never heard it. But I don't think it was correct. But I don't know. Maybe it was. What do I know?
You know what our sponsor, Henson Razors, is really good for?
Yeah, making you have less hair on your body, doofus.
Okay, but also gifts. Father's Day just passed, but this is a super classy and kind of cool thing to give for a birthday or something. My friend's son recently graduated high school, and this is a true story. He got him a Henson razor as like a "you're a man now" present. Son, here's your razor.
Jacob, you're like 26. How do you have a friend that just got a son that graduated high school?
Because I have mature friends, Blake.
Well, regardless, I hope your friend remembered to go to hensonshaving.com, use the promo code ROTTEN, so he could also give his son a free box of blades.
Happy graduation, son. Here's 100 razor blades. Hey, Blake, if someone likes this show, what's the best way they could support it?
Probably send us like $300,000 in cash. My PayPal is...
Okay, I was going to say joining Nebula using our link with the early and bonus episodes and all, but you might have a point. Just drop that cash off at
PayPal.com/GameQuery. Yeah, I wonder how some of those bars exist. Because it's like, is property or leasing, like commercial leasing, so cheap over there that you can just run a bar that only fits 4 people?
Right.
And it's like, how do you afford it? Do you have to own the space? And maybe that's how they do it. It's like they just buy the space and then it doesn't super matter how many people are coming. I don't know. But like,
yeah, or you know, it's just like, well, if it can only fit 4 people in it, it doesn't cost that much.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not like there's only one bar in a neighborhood. There might be 10 bars in a building, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, how are you doing this? But anyway, cool stuff. It was a great trip. A lot of highlights. I can't talk about any of the work stuff, but I'll tell you what, if you like puzzle games and or rhythm games, maybe check Game Informer in the coming months.
Hey, I love that show.
I hardly know her.
All right, let's jump into some questions. We have got a lovely slate of questions from people who have emailed somethingrottenpodcast@gmail.com about our recent Ninja Theory series, and also just questions about what makes a rotten game. We got some interesting. Can I jump ahead in the questions here?
Yeah,
because there's one that I just really want to talk about.
Yeah.
So this is from Yeshua, who emailed us that said, I was pretty against the redesign of Dante at the time, but I didn't really agree with the idea that the pushback from fans was out of homophobia. I wanted to ask if either of you were aware of the casual homophobia Ninja Theory used to disparage previous iterations of the character. At a GDC event, they had a whole presentation showing DMC4 Dante photoshopped into Brokeback Mountain, then pointing to a slide of Fight Club to say, that's what their Dante was like. And it links to a thread from Jackson, aka @HeadFallsOff on Twitter, which is one of my favorite accounts, that has like several slides, which include it says Dante is not, and then it has the George Clooney Batman and Robin with like the nipple buttons, and then it says Dante is, and it has a picture of fucking Dane DeHaan in that found footage superhero movie. What's that movie called?
The one by John Landis's kid?
Yeah, I think so. Oh yeah, Max Landis, famous fucking giant asshole.
Yeah.
Which that movie sucks, but that's what Dante is. And then it says Dante
suck?
is. I don't like it.
I was thinking about that movie the other day because I was on a plane and I remember the scene where they're flying in the clouds and the plane goes by. It was a cool scene.
Yeah, I bet you could. I think you could probably boil that movie down to like a couple of cool looking scenes.
Oh, sure.
But overall, and it has Dante is not, and it has a bunch of, I guess, how would you describe? It looks like kind of proto emo Japanese high schoolers. Like, is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, it looks almost like a Trigun cosplay.
Yeah, and then I don't know what it's saying Dante is. Like, I don't know who those people are.
They just look like normal ass teenagers.
Yeah, it's just kind of like skinny smokers. But then there is, as the email said, this picture of Brokeback Mountain with Dante from DMC4 photoshopped between Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal. And then but this is still old Dante in Fight Club. So what are they saying here?
I mean, like, Fight Club is pretty homoerotic.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, but it seems like, are they...
I'm not sure, yeah.
Oh, man, it's so funny. So, anyway, I think, I do think that, a lot of people complaining about emo wimpy Dante was still, I believe that, Yeshua didn't see this. I think some of it was there. The memes that I've seen that are basically making new Dante look like weaker and whinier than old Dante, I think are kind of coded. But this is fucking hilarious.
It's very good. I'm super confused about the Fight Club part. Are they saying, like, if they're saying old Dante is gay, is Fight Club a point against that or for it? I don't fully understand. Also, I think there's some examples in the Sphere Hunter video of old YouTube videos that are very homophobic talking about this redesign. So I think a lot of parties were being really shitty, including Ninja Theory. And I'm a little embarrassed we didn't talk about it in the season because I meant to bring up some of the Ninja Theory stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, but what's weird about this is kind of what we know of the background, which is that Capcom was pushing them to make Dante more different. But then it seems like, I don't know if Capcom told them to say that old Dante was gay, but it certainly seems like this is the way that they chose to do it. It's like, hey, no, ours is cool. The old one sucked. Look, he was in Brokeback Mountain.
I think in a lot of ways, Ninja Theory has been trying to repent for the Devil May Cry era through Hellblade up until recently. They're like, sorry about all that, y'all.
I want to read this other part of Yushu's email that said, the other thing I thought was classic Dante is way more flamboyant to begin with. There's never been a sexual relationship suggested between him and any other characters, but come on, he spends most of DMC3 with his titties out, and he performs an improvised musical in its sequel, which is very funny.
We also, Sean Kranitz wrote in and said, Dante being emo in DMC versus the originals, such a baffling nitpick. It's like people forgot about this scene in the first game with Dante holding a corpse and yelling into the sky, which is the famous, supposed to fill your dark heart with light or whatever.
Supposed to fill your dark heart with light.
Yeah.
Great stuff. So anyway, I just thought, I am so glad that they found that slideshow presentation, because what a fucking thing. And it is so, it's like the whole, it's like Ninja Theory really seemed to be pushing themselves to become edgier, because like Enslaved is a weird game, but it doesn't have any of that shit in it. So it really seems like they were like, okay, we gotta do this for Devil May Cry.
And look, you know what? You can't win them all. They made a fun game, but a lot of bullshit going on around that.
That's, speaking of that, let's see, I want to find the question about this. Drew asks, I've been meaning to ask this question since the Darkness miniseries, but I haven't gotten around to it until now. Has Blake's position on the fact that rotten games need to, quote, play like shit changed or been revised since he first brought it up in the Kane and Lynch miniseries? You guys have been really effusive about how good some of the recent rotten games are to play, so I wondered if that's moved the needle.
Yeah, for listeners who maybe haven't heard that, I think this was years ago, so maybe got some of the details wrong. I think my point was I felt like Kane and Lynch 2 was was mechanically more in line with its themes than something like, I think we talked about Last of Us Part 2, which would have come out that year when we were talking about it, because Last of Us was too fun to play compared to its like statement on violence, which I stand by to some degree. But no, I don't think they need to play like shit anymore. I think a lot of them do, and I don't think that's often intentional. But no, I don't know.
Yeah, but it is an interesting question, because I do think that, like, I think it makes Kane and Lynch maybe less conflicted, than something. I mean, it's like something like Devil May Cry is so cheesy and over the top that I don't think it is necessarily like experiencing dissonance to play well. But I do think that, like, the Hellblade combat is weirdly satisfying given how unsatisfying intentionally the rest of that game is. It's weird that, like, getting a parry in Hellblade feels like really fucking good when the rest of it is like, I'm not enjoying this.
I think an distinction to bring up as well is like something like Hellblade and The Darkness 2, for example, are not necessarily games about video game violence or about violence in general. Well, I guess Hellblade has some stuff to say about violence, but like we were talking specifically about The Last of Us Part 2 and God of War 2018, which are games that, among other things, kind of want to unpack video game violence.
Yeah.
And I think the place we were pushing back, or at least I was pushing back, was like, I don't think these games should be as fun, because I just I don't know, go back and listen to the episode. I think, like, in the case of some of the games we've played in the recent seasons that are more fun, like, they're not necessarily trying to say anything about violence, So I think there is a distinction there.
Yeah, and kind of, I think, in the same way that we talk about games that claim to be apolitical are still making a political statement, it's like all of those games still are saying something about violence. It is just kind of like unintentionally, rather than, the very, like, this is a game about violence.
I don't know. Look forward to our upcoming Last of Us Part 2 season, which I'm going to duct tape Jacob's hands to a controller and make him do.
That's right. Okay, we got some more DMC trivia here. This is from Halen, who writes, I recently watched a video essay / documentary by the YouTube video Night Cry, the biggest train wreck in survival horror history by Tango Mushi. And while it's very off topic to go into how much of a train wreck that game's Kickstarter development and fulfillment was, it is on topic to point out a weird DMC-related aspect to it. According to Tang Mushi's research, the assets of DMC were sold off after the game's lackluster sales, and the Night Cry team used the Dante's model for a character named Harry. Also, the model was used for some Vietnamese dental videos.
I forgot to put the link in here for you, Jacob. So there you go. Hopefully that link will go straight to the section.
Oh, did you watch the part specifically?
Yes, it's hilarious.
Oh my god, that's just Dante. Oh, that's so funny. What the hell?
So, listeners, if you want to see this yourself, sorry, this is not the most eloquent audio here. This is from the YouTuber Tango Mushi, Night Cry, the biggest train wreck in survival horror history. And then the timestamp is, sorry, I'll cut this
It's
down.
like 6:20, 6:25.
I'm sitting through an ad for Excel Energy.
Wow, you know where there are no ads? Nebula.tv/somethingrottenpodcast.
That's right. Well, now I'm getting one for Diablo.
Oh god, and I'm seeing the dental video. Oh
so
my god,
funny.
that's so funny. It's like, I know this is one of those things that it's like not being inside a video game development studio. I know that people buy and use pre-made assets all the time. Like, it's not like a better game makes all of its assets from scratch.
Right.
But it is so funny to just buy it and like not change it at all.
Yeah.
Just be like, this is exactly Dante.
So if you go to that video, it's 6 minutes 31 seconds. You'll see the spot that Halo was writing
That
about.
is so funny.
Yeah.
Great piece of trivia.
Are there any other examples of that? Like selling that specific of an asset? That's so weird.
Well, yeah, because it's two things. It's one, that they sold it, and two, that the other people bought it and used it unadjusted.
Yeah, and also, like, it wasn't like a no-name developer. Like, that was the creator of Clock Tower. Like, that was a game that was going to have some amount of attention on it. It's not like it was just like some random Steam game going up.
Yeah, though honestly, I have never heard of it.
Oh, really?
No, Night Cry.
I remember Polygon did a story on it, like, many, many years ago. That was pretty interesting.
Man, what a weird thing. Also, you see that thing that Clock Tower has like a new VR game coming out?
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. It was one of the things. Am I making this up? I'm searching and it's just giving me the last Clockwinder.
Here's the thing we need to talk about.
Uh-huh.
The little man from the Clock Tower series with the giant shears.
Yeah.
One of the scariest characters in horror history. That shit creeps me out.
Well, and the that was basically in one of those many versions of Resident Evil 4 that they made before deciding on one. Like, that guy was basically in it. When they show the footage of like Leon being chased by a ghost, it's like the big scissors guy.
Let's talk about this, because I meant to bring it up on, was it the Call of Duty? No, sorry, not Nebula listeners, but let this be an ad for Nebula. Bonus podcast where we talked about Battles Without Honor and Humanity. Second time we've talked about it now on this episode. Directed by Kinji Fukasaku, one of Japan's greatest directors, and over here in the West, you might know him for making Battle Royale. Jacob.
Yes.
He directed Battle Royale very late into his life, in his 70s. His last film project was Battle Royale 2 Requiem, which he died after filming only the first scene, which meant his son had to finish it for him. But that was not his final completed project. Do you want to know what that was?
What was it?
The cutscenes for Clock Tower 3.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is like one of the most important directors in Japanese history. His final project before passing away that came out was the cutscenes in Clock Tower 3, and they're fucking sick, dude.
They are? Are they like kind of early pre-rendered? Like, when did it come out?
It was
Clock Tower 3.
It was PS2 era.
Okay. Yeah, Clock Tower 3 came out in 2002.
They definitely like have his style that like it was not super common to see kind of like handy cam stuff in video games at the time, like very shaky, like, I don't want to say documentarian style, but you know what I mean, like not on a tripod type filming. Like it had its own unique look that felt very distinct to him and unique for video games at the time. And there's also like a making of documentary from back in the day you can find on YouTube. I don't think it's subtitled, unfortunately, but like it's pretty well known that he worked on this, and like definitely Capcom was promoting it at the time because that was a huge name to be working on a video game. Like it's a weird little curveball right there.
That is so weird. I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
The Seventh Guest VR. That's what I was confusing Clock Tower with.
Oh, damn, that's sick. Holy shit. I want to play that. Seventh Guest VR. Wow.
Yeah, I have no idea. What they're going to do to modernize it, but
yeah.
One of those weird VR projects where they're like, technically this is an existing IP.
And we wonder why VR has never taken off in the mainstream with such tentpole titles like The Seventh Guest.
All you need to do is buy a new $500 headset.
So you can play a 55-year-old video game.
All right, you pick one of these questions.
Okay, let's see. Oh, here we go. I love hearing you guys discuss what does and doesn't qualify as rotten. It makes me wonder what game surprised you the most as being rotten when you weren't expecting it. This comes from Synth. I like this, and my answer, I think, is Hellblade.
Uh-huh.
If you go back, you can hear me question slightly whether or not Hellblade will be a rotten game, and my God, it was rotten to the core, Jacob.
Yeah.
But are there any games that stand out to you, non-something rotten games, that ended up being kind of rotten?
Oh, you mean like ones that we haven't covered?
Right.
That's a good question. I mean, they're all probably on our list. You know, I think it's very cool how, or, you know, I don't know if cool is the right word, but like, I have always been a fan of how hard God of War 3 goes into its just, you know, it's like God of War 1 and 2, very violent games, you know, but like the kind of nihilism at the core of God of War 3, I find really fascinating, and apart from Last of Us 2 might be kind of the biggest budget we've ever seen that at.
Sure.
You know, just given the level of like production on it. Otherwise, I mean, let me just look at our list of games, because if something struck me as rotten, I've almost certainly written it down.
I think I got one.
Yeah.
And maybe this was a failure of my expectations or just not knowing enough about the game, because in retrospect, I feel like people did talk about this, but Resident Evil 7.
Blake, I was just looking at that.
Yeah. When I played that, because I didn't play it until several years later after it came out. The only thing I knew about it was people were like, this is one of the scariest ones. I was not prepared for how fucking nasty that game was, especially I think about the bug boss fight where she's just got like bugs coming out of her private parts. Margit, or what?
Yeah.
Not Margit. Is that her name? Margaret?
The Margit's that boss in Elden Ring.
Yeah, right. And just all the rotten meat everywhere and the torture scenes in that game. It is nuts.
I think about that scene. Wait, there are two similar scenes, one in this and one in the Resident Evil 2 remake, where you're talking to like a cop through a window, and then like the top of his head gets pulled off.
That's 7. In Resident Evil 7, he gets the shovel put through his head.
The shovel shoved through. And then I feel like there's something similar in 2. But yeah, I was thinking of that shovel thing.
Yeah, in Resident Evil 2, it's the guy in the cell, and Mr. X sticks his hand through and grabs his head and pops his eye out.
Yeah. But yeah, Resident Evil 7, I think, is a great example, because even though that series had been, had a lot of gore and whatever in the past, it's like not exactly the same as a generational leap, but it is just like, this is working in a fundamentally different area than Resident Evil 6 was.
I mean, it's like oppressive horror. Like, it is just like, it's exhausting how scary and nasty and mean that game is. And I don't think any Resident Evil game had ever been mean in its horror before.
No, I mean, they had been mean in their, like, design where it was like, hey,
Yeah,
didn't get enough ammo 5 hours ago? Sorry,
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
start over.
But 7 is like a mean-spirited game at times, like just in how much nasty it's throwing at you. So yeah, probably that game. This is a fun question, though. I wish I had more examples.
I mean, and you're hearing potential future seasons of this show.
I mean, Persona 5, maybe?
I have no experience with Persona 5.
I guess, like, content warning, maybe, but, like, are you okay with mild spoiler, Jacob? You're never going to play Persona 5.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So,
Persona
like,
5 spoilers.
The whole thing about that game is, like, you know, you're going to try to, like, change the hearts of corrupt individuals, and one of the, like, first kind of big bad you go after is just straight up a pedophile at your school who has been, like, sexually harassing, and I think it's heavily implied sexually abusing one of the characters in the game, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, it gets really dark in those opening hours. Kind of stays that dark, but like it has that whole bright art style that I think kind of smooths it over a bit, but there's a lot of nasty shit in Persona 5.
I mean, on that lines, there's of course stuff like Doki Doki Literature Club, where like its whole bit is like, you're not gonna expect what happens next, you know. And I have feelings about that game, but it is certainly it's doing a surprising thing. A similar one from Salamancer. They say, do you think a degree of hope, particularly unexpected hope that comes towards the end, disqualifies a game for being something rotten, presumably, for undercutting the nihilism? For reference, I think of Lobotomy Corporation for both of these, though I don't expect you to try and play the 50-plus hours you need to finish it. It uniquely gives me the feeling that this place was built on poisoned foundations, that tragedy is baked into the walls of the building that is your play space, but presumably it ends with a degree of hope.
I'd never heard of Lobotomy.
No, never either. But I mean, it's funny to read this question immediately after talking about God of War 3, because the end of God of War 3 is literally, sparks of hope. Hope, it's raining down on the world, and it feels like so kind of out of nowhere that you're like, wait, what? And in terms of God of War 3, I do not think that the ending changes how rotten of a game it is.
Yeah, no, and I mean, like, Hellblade has a very happy ending. Max Payne 3 has a happy ending if you ignore the part where he is a terrorist. So no, I think a hopeful or happy ending does not negate the rot in games.
No, but it does. I think it does make it less nihilistic.
Yeah.
You know, in the way that we've, you know, like Kane and Lynch 2 Dog Days, the most rotten game ever made. It's like the ending of that is they just get on a plane going somewhere and the door of the plane slams shut and there's like nothing else, you know? It's like there's...
Here's my question.
Yeah.
Of the games we've played so far, what has the best ending? Because if you ask me, it's Kane and Lynch 2. The ending of that game is gobsmacking.
Well, of course you'd say that. Yeah, I think, I think the end of Hellblade is really good. I really like the place that story ends. But it is of all the parts of the game that might be the least daring part of it, you know, whereas like it feels a little more expected, even though we talked about how it subverts expectations. So it's like you can't beat Kane and Lynch 2.
Can we do Kane and Lynch 2 again?
We gotta do a couple more seasons before we can start retreading. Yeah, we do it like a 5-part series. We can get guests on every episode.
Dude, Kane and Lynch 2, man. We should do a season just on the promotional and ad campaign around Kane and Lynch 2, because it is fucking unhinged, dude. Have you ever seen the like magazine ads for Kane and Lynch 2? Which I think one, it just has Lynch puking. And the other one is like like Lynch all cut up and shit, and then there's all the trailers of them like breaking doors down with bowling balls or running naked. Like, crazy game. Fucking the best.
Great stuff. All right. Nick asks, just wanted to affirm that I'm fairly new to DMC and this genre as a whole, and the Ninja Theory one is the first one I've gotten right away. I tried 1 up to about level 10 to 11 before getting frustrated and played a bit of 3. Oh, okay, so tried Devil May Cry 1 up to 10 and 11 and played a bit of Devil May Cry 3 before jumping into this DMC the Ninja Theory one for the podcast. I love the modifier buttons and the flow of combat, and now I want to dive back into the main series. Curious where you think I should go next, given that I may continue 3, but I know I love this game.
5, right?
5 certainly is going to, like, it has the least, like, kind of older jank that you would have to overcome. My answer to this is kind of try Bayonetta. You know, if you like the Devil May Cry vibe, like the aesthetic and the lore, I really like 4 quite a bit, but I think 5 is just the best one and also would provide a good place to jump in. But yeah, try Bayonetta, man. Like, that is a satisfying combat system in similar ways.
I think you could also like play Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance.
Yes,
which is not necessarily like if the Devil May Cry games are a bit too demanding for you, which, like, fair. I haven't played a lot of those games either because of that reason. I think Metal Gear Solid Rising Revengeance is that the name, or is it Metal Gear Rising?
It doesn't have a solid in it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. How could I forget? I think that game's a little easier or more approachable than definitely Bayonetta, actually. Like, that might be kind of your jam. Also, just one of the best games ever made.
Metal Gear Rising is such an interesting example of the genre because it's like the combat is not like, it kind of doesn't matter what combos you do. You know, it's like the whole game is built around like parrying, and so the whole, like, you know, it's like the complexity of the combat comes from like knowing when and how to deflect, which is also pretty easy. You know, it's just there's kind of like an infinite amount of depth within that easy mechanic. But hey, good job starting Spectacle Fighters. That's cool.
You know what? You know a game you should play if we're going to be talking about the pantheon of Spectacle Fighters? Nier Automata.
Oh, hey. Great game. Probably doesn't hit the same buttons as Devil May Cry in terms of... It's like, well, it might hit the same buttons, and then there are also 400 other buttons that it introduces.
Have we ever talked about that game? Like, me and you?
Not on pod, I don't think, other than referencing its combat system.
Man, do you like that game?
I like it. I don't... for me, it is a game that has a couple of sublime moments and is not, as a package, my favorite thing in the world. But I think what we have talked about is like the last hour of that game.
Unbelievable.
The way that they're where it's like, you're on the like separate elevators and you're like swapping between characters is like, and to the game's credit, you only earn that after making the player do like 40 hours of other stuff. You know, it's like if you tried to bust out that level in the 10th hour of the game, it would not work.
I think that might be the most I've ever liked a game in the moment while playing it. And I've like started multiple replays, and like one day I'm going to commit to replaying the whole thing because I really want to re-experience it because I don't remember a lot of it at this point. But I do remember just like playing through that and be like, it don't get better than this. And a few months before I played Yakuza 0 for the first time. Insane year for gaming. 2017 was out of control. I also played Horizon Zero Dawn, which stands out to me.
Oh, I think, no, that's the thing where there were like 3 months where like, you know, so many, it was like Hollow Knight and Breath of the Wild and Nier Automata and Night in the Woods
Persona
all came
5.
out. Yeah, but it was like, a truly nutso year, and even just like span of weeks for games to come out.
Is Automata a rotten game?
I mean, it certainly, with like the last question, it ends incredibly hopefully. You know, I don't I think we could play it on this series. I think there are certainly rotten parts in it, but like it's almost got too much going on.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's not focused enough on just the rottenness because it has like 20 other things it wants to say.
It's actually shorter than I remember. Main story, only 21 hours. Here's the thing, folks. Nebula.tv/somethingrotten. We'll start playing these longer games if you start shelling out that money, baby.
Yeah, well, and
pay up.
And you'll get to hear what we're doing next season, which I'm pretty excited about. All right, we got some questions on rottenness.
Now that you got, yeah. This is two. We're combining two questions here. Now that this comes from Zed. Now that you guys are doing this podcast so often and are seeking out and playing so many rotten games, as opposed to discovering something's rottenness, that's funny, something's rottenness, organically every now and then, how do you think that changed how you think about this media and or its rottenness? Do you find yourself more into rotten media the deeper you climb, or do you think that some of the shared elements, motifs, and general ugliness will get boring after a while? And I guess one more related question, is it actually more or less enjoyable to be caught off guard by a game being super fucked up in this kind of way, instead of knowing going in? And do you have any stories of being completely blindsided by a game like that? And then Mustafa asks...
Here, well, why don't... Let's talk about that one, and then we can do this one. The last part is similar to the other question that we got of being surprised. But I think it's a really good... the beginning of that is almost the question about, like, you know, playing video games for work or like analysis instead of just like playing them because you like them. Because it's like, yeah, your relationship does change to things when you were kind of looking for something specific in them.
Yeah, I mean... I don't think this is necessarily specific to games, because I actually think outside of the podcast I don't play many rotten games on my free time. It's like I'm playing like Street Fighter 6 and Zelda right now, and not being like, I'm going to go play Amnesia or some shit. But I do feel like...
Hey, I'm going to go play Amnesia.
Hey, have fun. There's a new one coming out, right?
It's out.
Oh, look at that. I've never played the Amnesia games. I do, though, seek out, like in movies and books, it feels like rotten media more often than not. So in that way, I don't think this podcast has changed my relationship with that media. More, that was just a large part of my media diet. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think this has changed my game playing at all, other than to say it means I play a lot more video games than I did before the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably gonna like beat more video games this year than
almost certainly. Almost certainly.
For me, it's like I do think that in a similar way to how I approach playing games for my like YouTube essay writing job, where I do kind of find a game, and sometimes instead of just thinking, this looks fun, I think this seems like a kind of rich source for analysis, which I really enjoy, but are different calculations. You know, sometimes I play something that I wouldn't if I didn't have a YouTube channel, because I think this will be a good thing to talk about here. I was like curious about the Darkness, you know, PS3. I never would have gone back and replayed that if not for this show. And so there are things that, you know, we're playing because of this. But I think, you know, in terms of like the question of like, will it get boring? The thing about continuing to do this show is we are kind of expanding the definition of it. And by doing so, we are getting exposed to lots of different permutations of what this theme could look like. And so it's like, even with the last season, Hellblade and DMC are nothing like each other, you know, in terms of like aesthetics or even philosophy. They just both kind of happen to be about violence and are both made by the same developer. But it's like, you know, I'm not like, oh, another one of these. I think if we went back and were kind of only doing like PS3 era shooters, we would get bored more quickly.
Yeah.
Blake, I think I'm a person famous for having a beard, but sometimes
this is how you're going to start our sponsorship read.
Sometimes it gets too much, you know? It can get scratchy. It can get out of hand. I mean, we're about to enter soup season, Blake. If I don't take care of this somehow, I'll be a mess.
I'm not participating in this. You just say whatever it is you're going to say.
But controlling my beard is easy because I have a Henson razor and I actually do love it. Henson sells premium safety razors made out of metal designed to never be thrown away and designed to use super cheap, super sharp standard razor blades. While the buy-in on Henson is higher than a cartridge razor you might get off the shelf, those costs flip pretty quickly. I've been using my Henson for a couple years now, and I'm still working through the box of blades that you can get free by going to hensonshaving.com and using the promo code ROTTEN.
Okay, so the script says, but how does it shave, Jacob?
Thanks for asking, Blake. It shaves great. These razors are constructed to have such an exact specification that the blade only sticks out a tiny, tiny bit, meaning it's actually really easy to shave and really hard to cut yourself. It's a good product.
Okay, yeah, I do like them too. I have to admit. I also have to shave to get ready for soup season. Go to hensonshaving.com and use promo code ROTTEN to get a razor and a free box of 100 blades.
It's soup season, baby.
Or post a successful Nebula podcast so you get them for free. It's a great deal.
That's right.
Actually, that would save you money, listener. Do that instead. Hey, do you know a better version of this podcast is available on Nebula? It's the same show, but with no ads, and you get to hear every episode a week before everyone else. And there's a full-length bonus episode included with every season. That means that if you're listening to this, there's at least one more episode of Something Rotten available to you right now, as soon as you sign up for Nebula. We'll even give you a custom RSS feed. You can continue listening in the podcast app of your choice. Apple, Spotify, whatever the hell you want. It's easy to set up, and you get all your bonus and early content delivered right to you. So when you sign up using the link in the description, you're getting all that extra stuff I mentioned, but you're also directly supporting more episodes of this show. Get more Something Rotten, as well as everything else on Nebula, by going to nebula.tv/somethingrotten. Here's a question from a longtime listener, Blake Hester, that I'm curious about. You, aside from games, you encounter any rotten media recently that you were stoked on?
Unlike you, I feel like I seek this out more in games and less in real life. I have talked about online several times. One of my favorite current authors is this guy named Nanakwame Ajayi-Brenya, who recently wrote a book called Chain Gang All-Stars, which is a book about like a prison, like it's essentially near future dystopia, gladiatorial combat with prisoners, being like, hey, you can earn your freedom if you fight. And it's like, that book is certainly not nihilistic. It has a lot of heart. It has like a philosophy that's pushing, but reading that, or especially reading some of his short stories, there are parts that feel so brutal and hopeless that they are very rotten feeling. I mean, his previous short story collection, which is called Friday Black, has these, incredibly politically poignant stories, but you read them and you just feel like awful afterwards, which I feel kind of goes in with the rotten theme. But other than that, I don't know, not really. I watched the Mortal Kombat 1 trailer yesterday. Does that count?
Yeah, dude, that shit was so gnarly. I really want to read Chain Gang All Stars. I might go pick that up later today.
Good book.
Walk to Barnes and Noble. I've been reading books by Ryu Murakami recently in the last year. Not to be confused with Haruki Murakami or Haruka. Anyway, different authors. Ryu Murakami wrote Audition, which might be his most well-known U.S. book because it was made into that Takashi Miike movie. But he has two books. Oh, gosh. In the Miso Soup and Piercing. Piercing's a sequel to In the Miso Soup. And I would love to do them for the podcast. They are rotten to the core. Just like, and kind of examining, just, granted they're a little dated now. I think they were late 90s, early 2000s. But just like examining kind of the life of people in their mid to late 20s, early 30s, and kind of where they fit into cities and relationships with sex and other people and like capitalism. And Jacob, they're fucking gnarly. We should read them.
I just Googled this book and the first like review on Goodreads is, "In the Miso Soup is not the kind of book you bring home to meet your parents. It is lurid, it is frightening, it is unpredictable." Hey, sounds good.
There's a scene in is that what you call parts of books scenes? Never thought about this before. Passage. There's a moment in the Miso Soup that was so fucking scary that I was like, how the fuck did he get away with this? Like, just what a character does is so insane that
That's, I'm always, and this is, it seems pretty short.
Oh, yeah.
Like
they're like
200 pages.
If that, with also big typeface in them, so you just fly through them.
Have you ever been really, like, not like read something in a book that was like fucked up, but been like actively frightened by a book? Because I can kind of only remember one like when I was a kid. Like book scares don't really work on me as well.
Same. The scene in Coraline when her otherworld parents are coming after her with the big buttons and the sewing needle. Bro, that's fucked up. Neil Gaiman's a bitch for that one. That was not cool. That shit was so scary.
Mine is from and also it's like I have to separate it from art because of course we were all scared of the scary stories to tell in the dark illustrations, but there was one story in that book that was like it was just some kid in their bedroom, and their bedroom was at the top of the stairs, and they heard like a voice that was like, "I'm standing on the bottom step. I'm like standing on the, second step." And then it was like, "I'm standing right next to your bed." And then they like called for their parents to turn on the light, and there was no one there. And like, that was the whole story. But like, I was, and am, so scared of the dark, and my childhood bedroom was at the top of a flight of stairs. And I was just like, so fucking freaked out every night just thinking about that.
Those most recently, Piercing and In the Miso Soup had parts that like got under my skin. Really, I don't know that I was necessarily scared, but like I was deeply unnerved by parts of them.
Yeah, because it's like I've read like Chuck Palahniuk books or whatever that I find kind of revolting, but not. I'm never like, eek. I hope they don't get me. Even when reading kind of freaky Stephen King stuff, but I haven't dove that deep into like horror fiction, and I'm sure there is some stuff now that I would get all freaked out by.
We should do a series going back to some of the Chuck P books, seeing how those age, because I just really wonder.
No, we shouldn't. I'll happily read In the Miso Soup and Piercing. I don't want to read those books and be
Let's do a bonus
book club.
Let's do a bonus pod on those two books. You could read them in a weekend. They're awesome.
Okay, so then we've got this second related question by Mustafa. Does a game simply having rotten elements and themes, such as cruel violence, child abuse, and misogyny, make it rotten, or does it need to relish and revel in its rotten elements and ideas to be rotten? I think I think in the true definition of rotten game, it does have to. It has to like those parts, it does have to relish them in a way. I think that there are, plenty of, there are 1 million games I could name with misogyny that aren't necessarily rotten. The same goes for, a lot of violent games that aren't necessarily, whatever. But it is kind of a play it by ear type of thing. It is, child abuse is something that they point out. It's like, I think it's pretty tough to put child abuse in a story and not have the point of the story be somewhat related to child abuse. That it's like, that is such a just kind of like unignorable theme that I feel like the whole work is influenced by that, in a way that, unfortunately, there are a lot of things that have misogyny in them that are not like about misogyny.
Yeah, I don't think games just having those elements always make them rotten, But I do think like games that but we also like won't cover a game just because they have rotten elements, Like we've talked about why we're not going to do something like Hatred or Postal 2. And it's like those games have all the elements that make up a rotten game. There's just nothing more interesting there to do with it.
Yeah, they are rotten. They're just not not like interesting, you know. And it's like, yeah, if you look at these, it's like you could probably find all these thematic elements in like Final Fantasy VII, you know, not
Yeah.
but that game, as much as I like it, not really a rotten game.
Yeah, and I mean, relishing and reveling in it. I feel like the big outlier going forward is like Hellblade does not revel in its rottenness. Like it's deep in it, but it doesn't necessarily feel like...
But it's fucking, it's in the muck though.
Yeah. But like some games feel like they are almost more celebrating the rotten.
Yeah.
And Hellblade, no matter how nasty it gets, it's never like winking and nodding at the player like, ain't this cool, the way something like Darkness does, or even some parts of Manhunt.
Yeah, it's like you would never make, you know, those those like kill montages that people make with Last of Us 2,
yeah.
where they're running through and like throwing Molotovs and whatever. It's like, try as hard as you could not make one of those with Hellblade.
Now hold on. Now I'm curious. Hellblade kill montage.
Well, I've told you, the first thing that comes up when you search Hellblade is Hellblade ASMR, which I cannot imagine why any person would want that.
Jacob, okay, there's not too many, but the intrepid YouTuber Pixel Sauce and Miva25 are doing brutal combat montages for Hellblade.
Wow, you know, never say never. Wow, and the use of, I mean, I wish I used the word insane less than I do.
Right.
You know, that's a word that I would love to take out of my language. The thumbnail of this says, most insane moments in Hellblade, which may be the least sensitive labeling of a video about this game you could possibly use.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, that's it. I think.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Man. Next season. We're not saying what it is, but it's gonna be a barn burner. I think. I hope. I haven't actually started the games, but I'm
Yeah.
more. I think I'm more excited about this season than I have been for the last several. Which I've been excited for all of them, but like this is the one where I'm like itching to get into it.
If you can think back to kind of your expectations of this season, like the Ninja Theory one, how were they met or subverted or, you know, changed?
I was like kind of dreading Hellblade because I did not have very fond memories of that game playing it the first time. And I still don't like that game in a lot of ways, but like I left Hellblade way more positive and like interested in talking about it than I expected to. Like I was not looking forward to playing that game at all. And I think was more interested in talking about it than even DMC, which is a game like from the onset was more excited to actually go back through. And I think was a little more disappointed by it than I expected to be.
Well, I have to say, I think DMC came out more of a rotten game than I expected. Because I mostly, you know, I've played that game probably like a dozen times, but I think I had only watched the cutscenes once. And like, I did forget the plot elements of it, and I was like, okay, this does fit. Like, we're not just playing this because it's a silly game, and then they went on to make a really interesting game afterwards.
Yeah, I kind of forgot how gnarly that game gets. Like, all the baby stuff I had completely forgotten until we were playing that again, and that shit was nuts. But yeah, I think the most surprising thing about this season for me was like going back to Hellblade and like really kind of like sinking my teeth into it and be like, I still don't like this game mechanically in a lot of respects, but I think I forgot how actually interesting that game was, you know?
The most surprising part for me was forgetting that it ends with a direct sequel tease.
Oh, yeah.
Because earlier we had been like, they're making a Hellblade 2. How are they going to do that? The first game ended so conclusively, and the first game basically ends with her saying, like, Hellblade 2, gonna be on the Xbox Series X.
I think exiting this season, Hellblade 2 is like one of my more anticipated games, which I did not expect.
Oh yeah, true. I kind of thought we were gonna see it at the Summer Games Fest thing, but I guess Xbox has a showcase on Sunday, so we might see it then.
I hope so, because have you gone back to rewatch the trailers?
Oh yeah.
I'm fascinated. Especially like some of the behind the scenes stuff where they're like, yeah, we're just putting Iceland in our game 1-for-1. I'm like,
yeah, I really want to know how big it's going to be. We talked about this a little bit, but it's like, is it just going to have super good graphics and be like about the same scale of game, or is it going to be, twice as long or have like an open world or, whatever, now that they've got that Microsoft money? Anyway, this has been our Ninja Theory season. Stay tuned for our bonus episode on Nebula. And, I don't know. Stay cool, everyone. Just remember that Dante from Devil May Cry was in Brokeback Mountain. Go back and rewatch that movie if you don't believe me.
I've never seen Brokeback Mountain. I should watch it.
Yeah, Dante from the Devil May Cry series. He's there.
All right, bye.
Bye.